Okay, so today we are going to cover the third chapter from the book 4, that is Place and Leisure, and the chapter that we're going to cover up is Leisure in the Roman Villa. So we are going to see how Romans saw leisure and how they were spending their leisure time in villas. Okay, so let me just share the book and we will get started. We will not finish all the chapter today. We're going to take half of it because it will be really confusing if we take both the sections all together. I believe it is better for us to take the literature part, and then tomorrow with a fresh mind we will take the architecture and art and archaeology part, because it needs more attention from us, and our brain needs to be fresh when we are taking that part because it's a little bit complicated. So today we're just going to cover half of it, and tomorrow inshallah we're going to complete it. So today's chapter is all about Roman villa and how Romans spend their leisure time in villa, what kind of leisure they had, and how did they see their villas and how did they spend their times in there. So that's what we're going to see here. There is one question that has been commonly repeated, and that is that what are the evidences of what are the evidences left, or what are the features left from the Roman villa now? And that is our architecture, archaeology, art, and literature. We are going to take that section tomorrow, and also from the first part, the questions that is coming, that how did Roman people or the high aristocrats spent their time in their villas, which we are going to take today, that part, the answer to that question. And the answer to the other question, we're going to take it tomorrow. So there are two main questions that has been repeated several times from this chapter, and one of it we're going to cover today, and the other one we're going to cover tomorrow. So in introduction, the first part, there is nothing really important. It's just saying that, giving an introduction, that leisure in Roman time, they spend their leisure in different ways, and one of the ways was spending their leisure time in their villas, and we're going to see about that. So a villa in the country or by the sea was an ideal location for well-to-do Romans to spend their leisure. So a villa, usually the villas were either in the countryside or it was by the sea. It was near to the sea. And it was the best place for well-to-do Romans, is for the rich and high-class Romans to spend their leisure time in those villas and over there. So strong was the appeal of this lifestyle that it was copied by many later societies and can still be enjoyed today. For example, by visiting stately homes designed according to villa ideas, or by staying in holiday villas in the sun. So the idea of Roman villas and leisure in the Roman villa was such a strong idea that it was copied in so many other countries. Like it was there in Italy, it was there in British people. They copied designs of the villas and the understanding the concept of villas in British in their time. So we're going to see that as well. When you're writing, when you are mentioning about in your essay, when you're going to write about how the Roman people spent their leisure time in their villas, you're going to first of all write about a villa, that where is the villa. So a villa is in the countryside or by the sea, and it's the ideal location for well-to-do Romans. And then the idea was really strong that it was copied by other countries as well. You're going to mention that. So one particular reason for enduring attraction of the villas is that its lifestyle balances elements of city life, status, sophistication, competition, control, with qualities traditionally linked with the countryside, such as an idea of the simple life and an enjoyment of nature. This relationship is neatly summed up by James Ackerman, a scholar who has written a history of the villa across the centuries. The villa cannot be understood apart from the city. It exists not to fulfill autonomous functions, but to provide a counterbalance to urban values. So what was mainly the purpose of villas? What were they built for? Now, the rich people, the high class people of in Roman, they were not having a really, a really happy and luxurious. Yes, they did have a luxurious life, but it was so frustrating, so stressful, and they were escaping that stress, that frustration of the city by going into their villas and spending their time over there. So they had their life in the city, which had so many stress, so much work, and so much politics going on. And then there was the villas where they were, they were at leisure, where they were calm, where they were away from all those stress. So the villas is not something apart, something different, or something completely apart from the city. It is actually linked, that when the high class Romans are in the city, when they get tired, they go to their villas so that they will be, they can be away from the stress. And then when they come back to work, they are again back to their work and their daily stress and everything. So what they're trying to explain over here is it is a counterbalance. What do they mean by counterbalance? Is that the effect of the life of the city is actually removed when they go to the villa. So when they are in the city, they are working, they're stressed, they're frustrated, politics everywhere, there is power practice, people are controlling one another. But when they go to their villa, they just do what they like to do. Nothing, no stress, nothing. So it counterbalances. So the life of work, when they go to their villa, is removed. They remove all the stress and they go to their villa and they spend their time over there. So that was the main purpose of villas. It was built to be a place, like a safe house, a place away from work, from stress, from politics, from the city itself. In this chapter, you will be exploring how the arts, literary, and visual work together present a picture of this lifestyle at the Roman villa. By the way, this second paragraph is important. Make sure to mark it. It explains to you what is the purpose of villa and where it is usually situated. So when you are writing in your essay about how Roman people spend their time in the villa, you have to first give an introduction of what a villa is. And when you're doing that, make sure to take points from the second paragraph. So here they're just saying that there are, right now, there are three main areas that we can find evidences of Roman villa, of how they were, how they looked, what people did over there. And those are either through literature, we can find it through literature, through archaeology, and through arts. But there's also architecture. Architecture comes in art. So there is literature, evidences from literature, there is evidences from archaeology, and there is evidences from art, and architecture comes together with art. So we are going to see these evidences and see how Roman villas were actually built and what was their purpose, how it was decorated, what it meant in different centuries to different Roman aristocrats. The literature can convey a vivid and engaging picture of the villa's relaxing ambience, and this can be considered alongside evidence from the art and archaeology that survives from villas in Italy and in other parts of the Roman empires, such as Britain. So these evidences are collected from Italy and from the Roman Empire, such as Britain. And what type of evidences? Literature evidences. There is archaeological evidences, and there is art and architectural evidences. But the survival of evidence is a crucial issue because so much ancient material, literary as well as archaeological, has since been lost. The picture of the Roman villa as a place of leisure has to be compiled from what are sometimes rather patchy remains. So the evidences, the archaeological evidences, by archaeology, let me see what is the exact meaning in Arabic. Ilm al-Athar, I think, but still let me check. Archaeology. in Yes, it is ilm al-athar. That is what archaeology means. So the archaeological remains, al-athar, it is, it is very rare and it is not complete. So evidences from archaeology are not as much, and it is very less and it's very patchy. It is barely found. So this means that piecing together evidences from various sources is a central theme in this chapter, as you will see these individual pieces of evidence. So we are going to find these evidences and we will try to connect them to each other. Now here it's just saying that we're going to look at the literature evidences from for Roman life, of how Roman villas were, and what do these Roman people, what did they write about their Roman villas in their literature. So that's what we're going to see now. First, we're going to discuss what are the types of Roman leisure. Now, there are basically two types of Roman leisure, the way that Roman people spent their leisure time, and that is private leisure and public leisure. Now, let us talk about this. There is public and there is private. Now, in the private leisure is where we're going to cover Roman villas. So private leisure is Roman villa, but public leisure is something that was the high aristocrats, the high class people of Roman, these people were obliged, it was compulsory for them to go and attend all kind of public activities that has been happening in Rome, and they had to attend it even if they liked it or they did not like it, to show that they have a status, to show that they are high class people. It was something required from them to actually go and attend all those places. So let's read about Roman leisure in public and private life. But public life is what we're going to see now, and private life is what Roman villas are going to come. So before we look at all this in detail, it is important to place leisure at the villa into its wider historical context, and in particular to relate to it for far less genteel aspects of Roman leisure, which you may have encountered. Ideas about leisure were some of the sturdiest pillars on which Roman perceptions of society and selfhood stood. Leisure was not a neutral area. Strains and conflicts existed within Roman society between the emperor, the elite, and the masses, and these found their most telling expression in anxieties over the use and misuse of free time. So leisure was not a simple topic for the Roman people. The topic itself was so complicated that it formed anxiety to people of how they're going to use their free time. Are they making use of their free time or are they misusing their free time? So the topic leisure itself, it was so complicated for the Roman people. They were trying to figure out which is the best way to spend your leisure and make use of it, and which is the type of leisure that is misusing your time. So nothing really in here, but nothing really in here, nothing really important in this part. Now we're going to we're going to read this part. The audio discussion ranges over the leisure activities of Roman people, both the organized variety. So there is we're now talking about the public leisure, okay? The types of public leisure. There is the formal public leisure, and then there is the informal public leisure. The formal are like games in the arena. At that time in Roman, if you have seen some Roman movies or anything, you can see that it is like a big battle place, like circle, and people are sitting around and around and around. And in the middle, there is the battle area where people battle. It could be people against beasts or animals, or it could be human being against human being, or chariot races. So these were the type of games in arena, the chariot races, at the Circus Maximus, religious festivals, and imperial birthday celebrations. So these were the organized public leisure activities that the high elite people, people who were of the elite level, they were the ones who had to attend it, even if they liked it or they did not like it. They had to attend it. And the informal type that was going to the taverns, that is like pubs or bar, so-called, right now it's called as bars or pubs, and olden times it was called as taverns or public bath. So they even went, the informal type of leisure was taverns or public baths. So these were the public leisure. Now the public execution, gladiator back combats. So gladiator combats is, by gladiator they means the type of fight between, with weapons, either between two human beings or human being and a beast, where they used weapons to kill each other, and they had to kill someone, and the one who was not killed was the one that won. So these are the gladiator combats, to the death and slaughter of exotic beasts. Now they did it against the beast, or that was made in the amphitheaters. Amphitheaters is the one that I explained to you now. That is like a circle where there are seats around and round and round, and in the middle is where the battle is happening. So that is called as the amphitheater, where these kind of combats, the gladiator combats, were happening. So in the gladiator combat, there was not an option. It could be either two people or a person and a beast, and one should kill the other. If the one, it's not an option that both come out of it alive. One should have been killed. Either it's the beast or the person, and then it would be the end of the gladiator combat show. So it was one of the activities that was happening at that time. I know it's really bizarre, but it was happening. So, and the high aristocratic elite people had to attend it as well. So these are all the, all the public leisure activities that they had at that time. Now, the emperor of the Roman people, he considered himself as the father of the people. Now, he had to be there in all kind of activities, either if it is a small family activity, it could be a party, a small birthday party, a religion gathering, a religious gathering. It could be any type of entertainment, be it public or private. The emperor should have been invited, and the emperor should go to that gathering. So the emperor was, he called himself as the father of the people, and he had to be there in all sorts of in entertainment, either in public or private. He had to be there. Perhaps this was so, but Toner also points out that the Roman elite was inclined to be judgmental and dismissive about the lower orders, whether they were at work or at play. On track 4 of the audio CD, Helen Lovat, you don't have to remember these names, by the way, Helen Lovat and Toner, you don't have to remember them, suggests that high-ranking Romans felt obliged to be present at public entertainments like the games, whether they attended with enthusiasm or with varying degrees of disapproval. They must have felt it was even more necessary to preserve time and space for the forms of leisure that distinguished them from the common people, since the style of their leisure was keystone of their upper class identity. So as I said before, the higher class, the upper class, elite people had to attend public entertainment, like the games. They had to attend it even if they liked it or they did not like it, like the chariot races, the gladiator combats. So these entertainment activities, the high upper class elite people had to attend it even if they liked it or they did not like it. They had to attend it. This actually showed, their presence in those entertainment activities showed that they were the upper class people, they were the elite people, and this was a sign of their upper class, their highness. So they had to be there. For these wealthy, educated Romans, the villa provided just such a place. It was associated with quiet, peace, and offered time for civilized intellectual exchanges and for literary pursuits. So for these upper class people, public entertainment activities, they had to attend it even though if they liked it or they did not like it, Villas was a place of, of a place of quiet and peace for them. It was a place where they could actually use their leisure time in something important or in something of good use, like literature, like reading, intellectual exchanges. So villas were the place where they could go and they could have peace and quiet, and they could have actually, intellectual exchanges and literally pursuits over there. So that was the importance of villa for the upper class people. Yet even so, it seems that the villa was not altogether a place of total escape from the city life. With its social demands and its noisy mass entertainments, after all, gladiators were a popular subject in the mosaics and wall paintings that decorated villas, alongside other more intellectual topics. And many villas were near enough to amphitheaters in local towns to allow for visits. Perhaps viewing the games from a safe distance reinforced the owner's sense of calm and put the peace of the villa into sharper relief. Now, here it is saying that even the villas was not a complete, a total escape from the city life. Even though they were in the villas, the amphitheaters where they had the gladiator games, the gladiator combats, it was near to the villas. So these upper class people, even though, there's constant entertainment activities happening, just imagine, anyone every day literally there is entertainment activities for them. And they had to attend all of these, and they did not get time for themselves. It was literally they're just going and being there even though they did not like it. Just imagine that. I wouldn't be able to do it. Like, I couldn't go to a movie I don't like to go just because of the people over there. I mean, I know that we have to respect it, but I wouldn't go to a place where I did not like. And that too, just imagine if we go once or twice there. I know you all will agree with me, there are certain relative, some certain family gatherings that you wouldn't like to go, but still you have to go, you have to be there just to show respect. Just imagine those kind of family gatherings every day, 3 times a day. You have to go to the places you don't like. How would you feel? These upper class people felt the same way, and it is really sad, to be honest. First, I did not like these upper class people, but now I'm feeling sad for them. Yet even so, now here they're saying that these amphitheaters were so near to the villas that even though the upper class people, they were in their villas, they had to watch the games, they had to watch the gladiator combat from their villas. So they had to see it, even though they did not go to the gladiator combat. They had to watch it from their villa. And it was not a complete a complete escape from the city life. Even though they were in their villa, they had to watch the gladiator games from their own villa, even though they did not go to the gladiator games. So this is about the two types of leisure that the Roman people had, and that is the public leisure and there is the private leisure. Now, the public leisure are the type that is the gladiator combats, the games, the chariot races. So the upper class people, they were obliged to attend these public leisure, even though they did not like it. And then there is the private leisure where they spent their time in their villas, exchanging intellectual exchanges, and they were learning literature and approaching literature. So these are the two types of leisures, and the one that we are going to focus on is the private leisure, that is the Roman villas. How did they spend their time in Roman villas? So first of all, we're going to see the literary evidences, the evidences from literature of what was the purpose of these villas and how people spent their time in their villas. So in literary pictures and evidences from literature, there is, I think, 4 evidences. One is of Horace's villa, and then there is about Statius, I think, yeah. Second is Statius. Here, yeah. Second is Statius, and then there is Pliny. So there's 3 actually, not 4. 3 evidences from literature, and that is from Horace, from Statius, and from Pliny. We're going to see them one by one, and then we will end here, because until here you're going to feel it's nice and easy, it's going calm. But then once I start from art and archaeology, you will be confused. So we're going to take art and archaeology tomorrow. Okay, so let's start with literary pictures. Even more evidences to suggest this constant tension between town and country values comes from literary pictures of different sides of villa life. From the nostalgically simple to the hedonistically luxurious to the well-run countryside. So here, they're saying that there were different villa types. There were different types of villas. There were the simple villas, very simple ones, and then there was the hedonistically luxurious. By hedonistically, they meant, I just wrote it down over here. Let's just check the meaning. I want you to know the meaning because there are so many new words over here that you could use. Yeah, that is like a lot of luxuriously pleasures. It could be sensual pleasures, but it is hedonistically luxurious, means like super sensual pleasures, and that's so luxurious. So there were villas that were simple, and there were hedonistically luxurious villas. So we are going to see them, but we're not going to see the hedonistically luxurious. They're just trying to say that what types of villas were there. Now we're going to see Horace's villa. We're going to see why Horace liked it, what was the purpose of it, and what did he do over there. Then there's Tatius's villa. How did he get it, and what was the purpose of it? And same with Pliny. So the first one is Horace. We know the poet Horace. He is one of the very famous poets, very famous poets in literature. So Horace, 65 to 8 BCE, lived in interesting times. During his lifetime, Octavian, the teenage heir of Julius Caesar, became the sole ruler of the Roman Empire, taking the title Augustus in 27 BCE. Now, Horace was there at the time where Julius Caesar was there, and there was fight of, Julius Caesar died, and then there was Mark Antony. Mark Antony took the place of Julius Caesar, and there was Octavian. Octavian was against Mark Antony, so they had a fight, the Battle of Actium. And why am I saying you this? Because Horace was there at that time, and Horace was taking side of Mark Antony, okay? Then after the Battle of Actium, when Mark Antony lost and Octavian won, Horace lost his lands. He lost his lands, and he had to work as a secretary in the treasury. So he started working as a secretary in the treasury, and he had to work for a living. He lost his property, he lost his land after the Battle of Actium because he was taking side of Mark Antony. Now, because he had really good poetic skills, when he was working in the secretary in the treasury, because of his good poetic skills, it kind of brought him into attention of influential people in Rome at that time. So there was one person called as the Maecenas, okay, remember his name. He's important in Horace's life. So Maecenas was a person, he was a really influential person. He was the secret holder, the person who Octavian told his secrets to, and he was really, really close to Octavian, who was the ruler of Rome at that time. So you see confident here, it's not confident, that means you're confident of yourself. Here it's confidant, it's A. So confidant means that it is the secret holder, the person, like for example, I have a friend and I tell everything to her, and she's keeping my secrets, so she's my confidant. So like that, Maecenas was the confidant of Octavian, and he was the cultural attaché. By that, he means that he was so close to Octavian. And Maecenas heard about Horace, and he loved Horace's poems. So Maecenas gifted a villa to Horace, and that was in the countryside, and it was called as the Sabine Hills Villa. So Sabine Hills Villa was a gift given to Horace by Maecenas because Maecenas loved his poems. Horace's poetic knowledge and his skills, his poetic skills. So, benefiting from the views regime politically astute patronage of arts, Horace now had more time and a congenial locality in which to realize his creative talents. And of course, in his poetry, he took the opportunity to show his gratitude towards Maecenas and to celebrate Rome's first emperor, Octavian Augustus. So, he was gifted by Maecenas, and Maecenas was a high influential person. So now see the word over here, astute patronage. This means that a person who's having high power and he's making use of people by giving them stuff. Like, let's say that now here, Maecenas, he's a high influential person. So he gave a villa to Horace, and now Horace is ready. Horace has to do favors for Maecenas because Maecenas gifted him a villa. So this is what they mean by astute patronage. That means using of power to manipulate and to control a person. That's what is mean by astute patronage. So here, politically astute patronage is like politically astute patronage means what I said before, that is controlling people with power and by providing them things, and then they have to do things for you in favor. So Horace was happy. He got a villa, and now he had more time to think about his literary skills, and he had congenial locality. By congenial, they mean congenial means like supportive, or a pleasant supportive locality in which to realize his creative talents. So the villa was a congenial locality for him. It was a pleasant place for him where he could realize his creative talents. And of course, in his poetry, he took the opportunity to show his gratitude towards Maecenas and to celebrate Rome's first emperor, Octavian Augustus. So in his poems, he actually thanked Maecenas for giving him the villa, and he also celebrated Rome's first emperor, Octavian Augustus. So this is how it is just a part of how Horace's villa was. This is an archaeological remain of Horace's villa. It is view of Horace's farm. This is how it looked like. So, however, Horace's Sabine farm was also important to him as a haven where he and his friends did not have to be on show or to impress influential people at the center of power. So now, even these poets at that time, they had to impress influential people with their poems. When they write poems, they had to write poems that they will, they are appraising the high upper class people. They are writing literature for them, they're writing poems for them, they're trying to impress them. So this Sabine Hill farm, this was like an escape from those places. It was a place where they're away from, trying to impress people, but they're being themselves. They're writing literature for themselves, they're writing poems for themselves, the way they like. Away from the stress of the city, they could discuss all kinds of matters from the light and frivolous to the philosophical and aesthetic. So when they were in the villa, he and his friends, they were able to discuss any matter. It could be anything, it could be as, philosophical, or it could be anything they could discuss over there away from the city matters. So nobody could, held them accountable for what they said or how they said, why did they say so, and all that matters was not there. Horace's love for his country retreat is discussed in the audio CD. For example, on track 3, you can hear a snippet from his satires. Now, what is satire? Satire is a type of literary device. It means like, poems that are that is like ridiculous type of poems that is making fun of something, those are the satires, where the presence of the city are presented in stark contrast to life at the Sabbath forms. So Horace, he wrote satires, and in his satire, he wrote about how different the life of city and the life of villas were, and how messy and how stressful the life of city was, and how calm and peaceful the life of the life in a villa was. In the same poem, Horace celebrates his time off in the country, and this is how the satire begins with the celebration of his Sabbath form. So his Sabbath form is in the countryside; it's not in the city. So he is actually celebrating his life in the Sabbath form in the villa, away from the city. So now we're going to see the three questions. What does Horace value most about his time in the Sabbath farm? And why do you think the god Mercury is singled out for special thanks? How does Horace convey the stress of the city? So what does Horace value about his time in the Sabbath farm? Horace's description suggests that his countryside farm provides a bracing and healthy environment with none of the city sickness. Here, he cites natural phenomena and also economic and political imperatives. The disease of social climbing, for instance. His country home is on the moral as well as the physical high ground, perhaps. So Horace, he is describing his countryside farm, his Sabbath farm, as a place where there's healthy environment and it's away from the city sickness. By city sickness, he doesn't mean only the physical part where you get sick, your body gets sick, but also where you feel sick because of the people over there. You're tired of the people over there. You're tired of the things that's happening over there. So city sickness, he did not only mean by the natural phenomena of getting sick, but also the economic and the political imperatives. The disease of social climbing, for instance, like the disease where people were fighting for power, who is higher than the other, who is more upper class than the other. So these were the type of things that he did not like in the city and he wanted to be away from. And in his Sabin Hills villa, he was away from all these sicknesses. His country home is on the moral as well as physical high ground, perhaps. Because it's a working farm, Horace is not necessarily totally at leisure here, although he does have slaves as bailiffs, managers, and so on. All the same, this country retreat sounds rather modest, and Horace suggests it would be foolish to ask for more. So Horace's villa is not is not a completely privileged villa. His villa is a working villa, is a working place where there are people who are working, even though he had servants over there who was working for him, but still there were things that he had to do in his villa. So it was not a completely really high extravagant villa, but it was still more than enough for him to spend his time away from the city. He says that it would be foolish to ask for more. So he's saying, even though it was a working villa, he really loved it, and he was saying it would be foolish of me if I ask for more than this. Now, why do you think the god Mercury is singled out for special thanks? Now, in Horace's poems, he actually he thanked god Mercury. So we're going to see, why did he just thank god Mercury? Now, god Mercury was known for, he was a Greek god, and he was known for luck and gain. He was known for giving people good luck, and he was known for giving people wealthy gain, maybe money gain, maybe status gain, those kind of gains, worldly gains. So he was more famous about among the businessmen and the thieves, where they were, praising god Mercury. So we're going to see, why did Horace thank god Mercury? So Mercury, the god Horace singles out of his expressions of gratitude, is probably best known as divine messenger, the Roman equivalent of the Greek god Hermes. So he's like the Roman god. He is a Roman god, actually, that is somewhat like the Greek god Hermes. So they are comparing god Mercury with god Hermes, the Greek god Hermes, and they're saying that his purpose is that appease and thus guarantee that Horus Oh, we were here. The Greek god Hermes. He was also the god of luck and gain, and as an appropriate divinity to approach, appease, and thus guarantee that Horus's delightful farm is not suddenly snatched away. Now, we saw before that I told you in the beginning about Horus that he um, he had property, but all of his property were taken away when Octavian became the Augustus, when he became the ruler, the emperor of Rome. So now he is thanking God Mercury and he's praising him so that his Sabin Hill villa will not be snatched away from him. So Mercury was also sacred to merchants and to thieves, a wheeler and dealer in business and commerce. So he was more famous among, people who were looking for monetary gain. To my mind, Mercury makes the perfect god to straddle the poet's divided life, as Horace suggested that his country existence is a privilege predicted upon his service in the stressful bustle of Rome. So he is thanking God Mercury for the privilege that he is getting in his Seven Hills villa. He's saying that in his Seven Hills villa, he is having the privilege of, he's having time. He can do things that he liked to do, and not like when he's in the city, when he is in Rome, where it's so much, it's so stressful in the hustle and bustle of Rome. To Horace, the most attractive aspect of the country life is its blessed relief from the capital city. So for Horace, the most important thing about his villa is that it is away from the stress of the city. It's away from the capital city. So he was also, okay, here. Indeed, his poem is partly about a polarization between maelstrom of machinations, and Horace gives us a vivid picture of the ducking and diving he does, both physically and verbally, while he's about his business there. He seems to spend a great deal of his time fending off requests for favors as he walks through the main forum. So Horace is talking about how difficult his life in the city was, that he had to do things, he had to do favors for the people so he will not get into trouble. Because over there it was like, if you're not doing a favor for someone, for an upper class elite, maybe that person could even kill you because you denied his favor, you denied to do for him something he asked you for. So it was a very difficult life, and Horace had to do favors for people, and he had to do physical favors where he had to go and do stuffs, or verbal favors where he had to say things to other people, maybe convey messages. So that's not really mentioned over here what type of physical and verbal favors they're talking about, but it was a difficult life for him. And he's saying that especially the public baths, and in his case the public thoroughfares too. So he's talking about his life in the countryside, in his Seven Hills villa is actually really good, and he really loves it over here. That's away from the stress of the city. And he's a little bit talking about what kind of stress he's talking about. Now Horace rather ingenuously insists that topics of his conversations with Macenas in the city consist of sport and the weather. Horace protests that he is not a trusted confidant of Macenas, and that they keep off the subject of politics and current affairs when they talk. Fancy footwork from Horace, I would say he is clearly stressed by the fact that so many people want a piece of him when he is in Rome. So Horace is talking about his relationship with Macenas over here. He's saying that when I'm talking with Macenas, we're talking about sports or the weather. And maybe he's giving his, he's saying poems of him to Macenas. And he's saying that I'm not a confidant of Macenas, like we're not sharing secrets. He's not saying me his secrets. There's nothing like that between us. And we're keeping the politics and economics away whenever we are talking. And Horace is saying, whenever I'm in the city, I feel like I am being used, and a part of me, like everyone wants a section of me, a part of me. So this is what he said, Horace told about his villa, and why did he like his villa? The three questions over here is answered. Now, away from it all at the villa. The second half of Horace's poem contains the story of the town and country mouse, and is told by one Horace's guest servants. So now, it's a little bit confusion. There will be a little bit confusion when you read this part. So without reading, I will try to explain to you what he's trying to say. What is a country mouse and what is a town mouse? So it's a story of two mouse. Okay, there is a country mouse and there is a town mouse. So the town mouse is the mouse that is, living with upper class people, having friends who are aristocrats, who are rich, and he's spending time with them, and he's getting good meals and good feasting, but he's really stressed out. The mouse is really stressed out. Now there's the country mouse that he's spending his time in the countryside, he's having his peace, he's having quiet. And the country mouse is actually saying that, how is the town mouse living like that? So stressful and not in a good way. So this is just a story about country mouse and about town mouse that was said by one of Horace's guests, by Servius. So now we are going to read through it. I just explained to you about the country mouse and town mouse before we read, because it's a little bit complicated when we come to reading it over here. Now, how does Horace justify relaxing with his friends? Now, Horace's very first statement suggests that the hasty and hectoring exchanges, where are we? Yeah. The hasty and hectoring exchanges he endures in the city waste his time. So he's saying that the activities that he spent his time into in the city is actually hasty. It's like it's not important. And hectoring is like things that is not of value. So it's not really of value for him. The activities that he's spending time in the city is not of good value for him. In contrast, the topics of conversation at the Sabin farm, far from being trivial or focused on material concerns, are often weighty and philosophical. Even though the dinner party itself is portrayed as a place to be frivolous and self-indulgent, so the reader might expect the entertaining little fable and follows to have hidden depths. So he's saying that when I'm in the Sabin Hills with my friends, we are talking about of really important, really weighty, really important matters, really matters that is important for him, that he gains intellectual exchange from them, and that is when they talk about philosophy and other stuff when they are in their Sabin Hills. But when he is in the country, when he's in the city and with people over there, he's actually spending his time in the parties, in activities which is not of any good gain for him, where he doesn't have any good gain from it. The moral of the fable seems to reinforce the positive view of the countryside as a safe haven and to promote the benefits of simple life far away from the pretensions, the pressures, and the real dangers of the city. The town mouse encourages his country friend to become parasitic at the tables of the rich. There may also be an allusion here to sometimes humiliating position of a client, which in the Roman system is patronage, meant relying upon a wealthier acquaintance who might hope for a slap-up meal, but then have the tables turned upon him if he were to fall from the favor. So what happens is that now they're talking about the fable, the story that was the town mouse and the country mouse. So the town mouse, he's spending time with his, with the rich friends, with the wealthy friends, where he's providing a meal and trying to ask for a favor from those wealthy friends. And it could be really dangerous. At times they would do it, at times they wouldn't do it, and they would humiliate the person and they wouldn't do it for them. Now the country mouse is soon to learn that the high life is indeed precarious and the banquets of the rich, and that he is far better off his modest woodland hole where he owes no one a living. So when he is now, the country mouse is really happy in his country home, where even though he's not having a rich life, he is actually living, a happy life, and he doesn't owe somebody anything. So this is what is the story of the country mouse and the town mouse. It's just like a story written by Horace. So on the other hand, the town mouse, fussy and urbane little creature that he is, talks in the rather lofty language of an educated and literary Roman. He persuades the peasant mouse to the sample of delights of the city banquet or rhetorical speech. The tone of the Latin here is rather pompous, the language of high epic story and flourish. So here they're just saying that, the town mouse is trying to, be there with his wealthy friends and, get things done through them, use them to get his things done. And it is really stressful life. On the surface, Servius' fable can be seen as celebrating the simple life somewhere as far away from the city as possible, and as a compliment to Horace and his country hospitality. Horace's estate, with its range of produce and array of wines, is far cry from the rough rural fare and an offer of the country mouse woodland hole. But Horace would not have said that he lived in the lap of luxury. Even when they were sending it up in a comic vignette, Roman writers still liked to conjure with the part legendary, part historical image of their origins as hardly as rustic race. So anyways, the main thing that we're going to take from here is that the fable that was written by Servius, it's written by Servius, and it kind of reflects upon upon Horace's life at that time. And we're just talking about here that how the country mouse is, at peace and quiet, and he doesn't owe somebody a living, but the town mouse is so stressed out because he has to, do favors for his higher class people, for upper class people, if he needs something from them. So it was a really complicated life. Now, to delve a little deeper, now this is just the conclusion part. To delve a little deeper, the fable ties in neatly with the tension Horace is left in dividing his life between work commitments in the city of Rome and his time away from his Sabine farm. Perhaps too, Horace is here indicating the compromises he himself has to make in order to live a good life, as he is in some ways a client of Maecenas, even though he classes himself as a friend. So this story, this fable is somehow relating to Horace, that Horace, even though Horace is living in the country, he owes Maecenas for giving him a villa. So even though he says that I'm Maecenas' friend, he's not actually Maecena's friend. He's actually a client of Maecena, where he has to provide, he has to fulfill, he has to do favors for Maecenas, because Maecenas has given him a villa. Self-irony and recognition of necessity underline the fable that Horace puts into the mouth of Servius, and after all, the poem in which it is told is a satire, and Horace himself contributed significantly to the development of the Roman satiric genre. Nothing really important in this part of it related to Roman villa, but they're just talking about the story, the fable of country mouse and town mouse, and how they live their life. The town mouse is trying to please and trying to do favors for his upper class friends, so he can get benefits from them, and the country mouse is living happily, and and he doesn't owe anybody anything. And this is actually compared to Horace, that even though Horace is living in the country, he has to do favors for Maecenas, because Maecenas was the one who gave Horace the villa. Now we're going to see Statius. About Statius, it's very little. Why was a villa important for Statius, and then we're going to see Pliny. Okay, so about Statius, Statius was at a time in the Roman time where the emperor was Domitian, and the emperor was Domitian, and he was a very, very rough ruler. Like, he was a very strict and rough ruler, and he did not give the upper class people any benefits. So even if the upper class people did a mistake, they were punished really bad. And Domitian was kind of jealous of these upper class people. So even if these upper class people are showing that they are upper class, they would be punished. So they had to be very careful at how they approach in the city, how they talk, how they move, how they wear, what they wear, and how is their house looking. So it was a really difficult time for them. Now, Statius, he wrote salve poems. So it is kind of famous salve poems, a book of literally vignettes produced to entertain his aristocratic patrons in the sumptuous villas. Sumptuous villas means like, super extravagant villas, like super exclusive, expensive villas. Now, expensive and luxurious villas. Now, the subtext to Statius' celebration of life of conspicuous consumption is that Roman elite who occupied these villas formed a guarded and claustrophobic circle who found it necessary to stay away from Rome in kind of voluntary exile. So these upper class Rome, they exiled themselves. They left the Roman city themselves and they stayed in their villas because they wanted to stay away from the city, stay away from the emperor's way. Why? The reason for removing themselves from the seat of power was that Domitian, the emperor, did not disguise the autocratic nature of his rule by the differential and tactical treatment of wealthy elite. This elite could feel very nervous about putting a foot wrong when they were close to the court. It was wiser to exhibit their status at a safe distance. So they were trying to keep themselves away from the city because if they did anything wrong, they would be punished really bad. In Statius' time, then, the villa was not just a place of leisure. Now, when Statius was there in Statius' time, villas was not just a place of leisure, but it was like a safe house for them where they could stay away from the rule of Domitian and Domitian's jealousy. Now, you see, Domitian's jealousy jealously guarded his monopoly of status and power. Now, Domitian wanted to show himself that he is the most powerful and he is the most wealthy. And if anybody portrayed that, any upper class elite portrayed that they are wealthier than Domitian, it would have been the end of them. So Domitian jealously guarded his monopoly of status and power, so it was in any case unwise to keep sumptuous townhouses in the imperial capital. So the elite people, they couldn't keep expensive houses in the town. They could, have just like a normal house in the town, in the city, but in the countryside, they would have really luxurious villas. As we discussed on track 5 of audio CD, Pliny the Younger had a number of villas. Now, that was all about Statius. That in Statius's time, it was important for him to, have a villa because he wanted to stay away from control of Domitian and stay away from the path of Domitian. Now, we're going to talk about Pliny the Young. Now, Pliny the Young, he was a very rich successor. His uncle's name was Pliny the Elder. He's called as Pliny the Young. So his uncle was called as Pliny the Elder, and he had inherited lots of properties from his uncle. Now let's read about him. Pliny had a number of villas, yet he suggested in his letters that his townhouse on the Esquiline Hill in Rome was far less ostentatious than those farther from the capital and the emperor. So Pliny had, he was really rich. He inherited lots of property and wealth from his uncle, Pliny the Elder. And he says in one of his letters, now Pliny was really famous. He actually documented all his life, political, personal, his work life, all through letters. So his letters are the evidences that they have found about life of Pliny and about the Roman villas. So he wrote in one of his letters that his house in the town, house on the Esquiline Hill in Rome, it was less ostentatious, means it was less luxurious. It was less luxurious. It didn't look expensive. than the other houses and the other villas he had in the countryside. So his other countryside villas, it was really sumptuous, it was really luxurious and expensive looking. Now we're going to focus on Pliny's villas. Pliny the Younger served under a succession of emperors. Now Pliny the Younger, he was there at the time of several emperors like Domitian, Trajan, and Hadrian, and had risen to a high position in the imperial government by the 100 CE. He even managed to pursue his political career during Domitian's reign by being a good civil servant and keeping a low profile in matters of display and self-advertising when at Rome. So he was being when he was in the city, in the town under Domitian, he was serving as, you know, as a civil servant for Domitian, and he was not showing off his property, his luxurious life in front of Domitian, but he actually was having, you know, he was very luxurious. Now, Pliny was a member of municipal aristocracy. Aristocracy is like upper class people at Como. So Pliny, he was a member of upper class municipal municipality at Como, and had excellent family connections. He had inherited property from his wealthy uncle Pliny the Elder, and was thus a very privileged man. So he was very privileged. He inherited lots of property from his uncle, and he had good family connections. Pliny the Younger left a fascinating record of his life. At times of his correspondence covers a wide range of topics: personal, political, social, and cultural. So in his letters, he wrote about his personal life, his political life, his social life, and his cultural life. Now, he took a lot of effort in writing these messages and writing these letters, because he wanted these letters to show him as an intellectual, as an artistic person, and not just of, you know, any usual person. So he made sure that the letters he wrote portrayed him as an intellectual and an artistic force of his times. Now, Pliny clearly valued the time he spent at his villas in Tuscany and at Laurentum near Ostia. So we are going to see two of his villas, that is Tuscany and Laurentum near Ostia. In his letters, he describes his country estates with great pride and affection. In his letters, he writes about his villas a lot, and he shows so much love and affection to them. Like Horace, nearly 2 centuries earlier, Pliny felt a great sense of relief when he was away from the demands of Rome and had time to concentrate on intellectual pursuits. The educated classes continued to promote the idea of otium. Now, otium over here means, it's like an old word of leisure, but leisure spent doing intellectual activities, like, you know, maybe reading about philosophy, learning intellectual activities. So otium is a word that says about leisure by doing intellectual activities. So at that time, otium was really famous because it was among upper class people, and they were spending their leisure time doing intellectual activities. And for Pliny the Younger, the villa was a really important place for him, where he could be away from the city life, from Domitian, and from the town life, and he could actually use his time in intellectual activities. So Pliny's uncle, Pliny the Elder, he was a really strict, and he was a really intelligent person. He was a really important person. So Pliny the Younger, he actually learned a lot from his uncle, and he is walking in his path, in the way he lived his life. Pliny the Younger wants to live the life that his uncle lived. So Pliny clearly valued the time he spent at his villas in Tuscany and at Laurentum near Ostia. In his letter, he describes his country estates with great pride and affection. Like Horace, nearly 2 centuries earlier, Pliny felt a great sense of relief when he was away from demands of Rome and had been to concentrate on intellectual pursuits. Now, the educated classes continued to promote the idea of otium as productive leisure in intellectual terms, and something that distinguished them from the common herd. So, as I said, even Pliny, he was a fan of otium, that is using their leisure time and doing intellectual activities, because this leisure is actually separated them, you know, from the common people. So it distinguished them, it showed them as higher class people, because they were practicing their leisure time by doing intellectual activities, not like the common people. So Pliny even characterized his villa at Lake Como in literary terms. In one letter he writes. So in one letter he writes, he is writing about his villas. So one is built. This is what Pliny has written. So one is built on the rocks with a view over the lake, like the houses at Baiae. The other stands on the very edge of the water in an equally buoyant style. And so I have named one tragedy, because it seems to be raisin on actors' boots, and the other comedy because it wears low shoes. So he has named his villas as tragedy and comedy, because tragedy is the one that is having long boots, like the actor's boots, and then comedy, the one who's wearing low shoes. So he's just describing his villa in a satiric way. Here, Pliny making an elegant joke about the look and locality of his villas, but he's also perhaps reminding the readers that these are places he associates with enjoyment of the arts and intellectual reinvigoration. Now, by reinvigoration, he means he's getting new energy, you know, positive energy when he's there in his villas. Now, turn to Pliny's letter. Does Pliny's villa lifestyle contrast? Okay, we're just going to read about this here. We're going to see how Pliny's villa lifestyle is different from Horace's picture of from duties he associated with Rome. So how Pliny's villas are different from Horace's villas. So Pliny's day in the country has a clear timetable and also might involve keeping open house for quasi-dependents. These large-scale villa complexes were not purely a place of escape from responsibilities of public life. Pliny, like Horace before him, enjoys the civilized company of educated friends at his villas, but civic duties, not just estate-related responsibilities, intrude his rural retreat. Pliny complains in later books of the letters that he increasingly takes work to his countryside villas in the form of court case preparations. So Pliny, he is having a timetable when he goes to his countryside villas, and like Horace, he enjoys spending his time with his friends in his villa. But what he does is he sometimes take work with him in his villas, and he complains about. He says that at times I also take work with me in my villas. So that's what he's complaining about. Now, Pliny's attitude to using his diminishing free time in an intellectually productive manner demonstrates that he is following in the footsteps of his famous uncle Pliny the Elder, a highly studious man who was an enormously productive author, writing the epic-length natural history. The younger Pliny had been one time rebuked by his uncle for walking when he could be carried in a sedan chair and read to on subjects of scholarly interest. Now, they're talking about Pliny, that Pliny was really, he wanted to use his free time in doing intellectual things, productive things, and he was walking in the footpath of his uncle Pliny the Elder. Now, Pliny the Elder was really famous because he was really studious, he was really good in his studies, and he wrote a book called as the Natural History. And at one time when Pliny, the younger, was walking, his uncle, Pliny the Elder, got angry at him that, why are you walking? You could have set, those chariot kind of chairs where they sit and four people are holding you and they're walking you by in the olden days. So Pliny the Elder was saying to Pliny the Younger that you could have sat on that and use your time in reading rather than walking. So that much he was studious and that much he wanted to make use of his time. So any hard-pressed student snatching a moment to study on the move might read this advice with a wry smile. And of course, Pliny seems to be evaluating his uncle when he paints the rather comical picture of himself taking his books on a boar hunt. So he also, there was once he wrote that he went to a boar hunt. Boar hunt is where they go for hunting bear. So at that time, for going for a boar hunt, he also took his books with him. That much studious. He wanted to show himself to be. Now, turn to Pliny's letter. Does the outline layout of the villa at Laurentum reinforce the picture you already have of the man and his life as a gentleman in the country? Now, as he celebrates his villa's attraction during his literary tour, in which he pauses to reflect on how he has achieved the perfect design for reading, writing, and studious leisure, Pliny is proud of his choice of site, its suitability as a winter villa, and the fact it is an easy traveling distance from Rome. It benefits from being in the country and near the sea, away from the urban sound and smell. So now Pliny is really happy of how his villa is, of how his villa, the Laurentum, is. Now he's saying that first of all, it is near to the sea, and the way he has designed it is a pleasurous design when he is trying to study, when he's trying to do an intellectual activity. So the design helps him to concentrate on what he is trying to learn or what he's trying to study. And the third thing, that it is near to a seaside, and the villa is near to the city, so he can easily go to his villa anytime he wants. Then the exercise area, the bat suit, the ball court, and the beautifully laid out gardens and orchards all contribute to the nurturing of his mental and spiritual health. So the way it is designed, everything in it, like the ball court, the bat suit, the bat suite, the beautifully laid out gardens, the orchards, everything over there is nurturing him and nurturing his mental and spiritual health. So he's really happy about the way his villa is, where it is, how it is designed, and how it is helping him when he is there. So Pliny has designed his room so that he can view the world outside on his terms and with his choice of changing perspectives. He enjoys different aspects of the sea and of the woods and mountains, all from the windows in the same anteroom. So there is a room called an anteroom in his villa where he can enjoy the view of the sea, the view of the mountains, and the view of the forest. So from that place, and the windows facing east and west in the small annex to the left and the dining area have been carefully placed to give occupant a daily display of the rising and setting of the sun. And there is in the annex, in the dining room, there's a window. There are two windows which can, which beautifully shows when the sun is rising and when the sun is setting. So he is enjoying all the natural phenomena that's happening around him, all the nature. He's enjoying it beautifully in that villa. So here he's talking about his villa and how it is designed, and how this design is, every small detail in this design is really crucial for him. Now, Pliny illustrates how the Roman elite had found a way of communing with nature while having plenty of protection against its rougher features. A similar claim, taming the landscape to maximize aesthetic pleasure, was made by Statius for his patron's villa. So they're showing that their villas, how they are communing with nature, how they are, making, how they are enjoying the pleasure of nature, how they are, feeding themselves, making themselves healthy, spiritual health and mental health by using these nature. So, and how they are maximizing their pleasure through this nature by the architecture, by the way they're designing their villa. So Pliny's extension comprises a carefully thought out, self-contained suite of rooms where he can study and write. There he is undisturbed by the voices of his slaves, and he can shut out the sound of the sea and the wind. So there is another extension that is made specially for him to study, where it is away from all the sounds of his servants, and it is away from the sound of the sea and the wind. And he remarks that he is very glad of this during the festival of Saturnalia in December. Slaves and masters sometimes reversed roles, and through carnival tradition during the mid-winter celebration, so a certain amount of controlled anarchy would take place. Pliny's arrangement means that he can escape here to carry on his cerebral pursuits while his household can create a carnival atmosphere with its more raucous entertainment. Now, this place that Pliny is having, that is a room which can shut out all the sound of his slaves and shut out the sounds of the sea and the wind. Now he is loving this room, especially when this celebration, this festival of Saturnalia is happening in December, where there's so much noise and entertainment. So he goes there and he shuts himself out where there's no noise and nothing, and he's not disturbed. All the same, Pliny has to make allowances for duty to intrude upon leisure time. The Laurentin villa also has an atrium, a reception hall where he can receive casual visitors and deal with complaints and requests from his tenant farmers. So also in his villa, this villa that he's having, that is Laurentin villa. In this Laurentin villa, he's also having a place where people could come and he would work in a reception where people came with their complaints and he would go and attend to them. So he also made a reception. So all these show that how Pliny's villa is built, that he is making use of every detail that is there in his villa. The first of all, we spoke about how the windows were made in his annex, where he could enjoy the view of nature. He could see the sea, he could see the mountains, and he could see the greenery. And then the second thing was the way the windows were built in his dining room, where he could see the sunrise and the sunset. And then we were talking about the separate room that he had, which was shutting out all the sounds and when he wanted to study. And fourth, that there was a reception in his villa where he would receive people who came with complaints. Even though it was a leisure place for him, at times he also accepted people to come in there and he would listen to their complaints. Now, summing up everything, Horace utters a poignant prayer. Poignant means, like, a sad and thankful, prayer of gratitude for the gift of land and property after the loss of his family estate. So Horace, he shows his gratitude towards the land he got after he lost his own land, his own family estate. While Pliny, he unashamedly embraces his privileges and his well-furnished villas as proper payment for his commitment to civic duty. But Pliny, he is showing off his villa as a reward of the work that he's doing, as what he deserves for the work that he's doing. Both men negotiated a good life in spite of the constraints of public duties and potential pitfalls of working for aristocratic rulers. When they write about leisure, they also provide evidence of stratified society with distinct political and social tensions. Now, they're just over here summarizing the literary pictures, summarizing everything up, that Pliny he was not ashamed, and he would exaggerate. He would talk about his villas a lot in his letters, and he believed that this is a reward of what he is actually doing for the people, the work that he's doing for the king or for the emperor. But Horace, he was really thankful for the land that he got after he lost his place. Now, they also, both of them, they went to their villas because they wanted to stay away from the stressful city. And Statius lets us into an intimate aristocratic circle, surviving the repressive regime of the jealous emperor, but quietly affirming its status through its leisured lifestyle. But for Statius, he was staying in the villa because he wanted to stay away from the jealous emperor Domitian, and he would live a good lifestyle over there. Pliny's letters about his Laurentin villa, like Horace's poems about his Sabine farms, gives an illuminating, if partial, portrait of the man and the impressions of studiousness and gentility he wished to leave to posterity. So Pliny, he wrote about his villa, that is the Laurentin villa. The villa of Pliny is called Laurentin villa, and the villa of Horace is called the Sabine Hills villa, Sabine Hills farm. So remember these names because when you're writing about them, you have to mention the name of the villa. So all the writers, they're writing about the importance, they're writing about their villas and what they did in their villa, the purpose of their villa, and how they enjoyed it over there. And the main thing that all the three of them shared was that it was away from the city life. So that was it. Next part from here onwards, we're going to cover it up tomorrow because it's a little bit complicated. We're going to look at the architecture, the art, and the archaeology evidences of Roman villa. We're going to cover it tomorrow. I wanted to cover it today, but when I read through it, I believe that it would confuse, it would create a lot of confusion. So it's better for us to look at it tomorrow. And that was it for today. If you have any questions, you can ask me, and we will close up for today. Is there anything you would like to ask? It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.